Hello and welcome to the Wildly Known Life podcast. I'm Nikki Hardy, your host and favourite fresh air junkie. Here on the Wildly Known Life podcast, we connect science, faith and wonder to help all us spiritually underwhelmed, grown-up humans of the world say yes to that sacred tug within. If you feel closest to God in nature and you're looking for biblically sound, nature-based spiritual practices that move beyond prayer walks around the block and thanking God for sunsets, you are in the right place. Because we believe that soul tug is God's invitation to reconnect with Him, yourself, and who you're created to be. Each week, we weave story, scripture, and science into prayers and practices you can carry into the woods, your morning routine, or a regular Tuesday afternoon. And this week, I've got someone to help us do just that, especially for when we're feeling stuck, exhausted, or uncertain about what's next, or life just hasn't gone as planned, and the weight of uncertainty, grief, or burnout feels overwhelming. As you'll hear, our guest, author and my favourite poet, Tanner Olson, knows what it's like to be in that place, but he doesn't offer quick fixes, inspirational fluff, or Pollyanna platitudes. Good gracious, I am so glad about that. Instead, Tanner walks alongside us with down-to-earth honesty, compassion, and calm, acknowledging that healing takes time and hope often starts small. Okay, let's dive in. Well, Tanner, you are a poet, you're an author, you're a dad, you're a husband, you're a friend, you're a coffee lover, and of course my favorite, because mine is under my desk right now, you're a doodle dad. So we are best friends already. Yep. But I would also say you're a little bit of an undercover comedian, because a lot of your poetry and your writing is woven with kind of this gentle, self-deprecating humor, which I have to say, we Brits absolutely love. So I know and love you and your work, but for those listeners who haven't met you yet, do tell us a bit more about yourself and the story you've lived that led you to write about, as you say, not fixing what we're going through, but walking through it with our hearts open to what comes next. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I think anytime in an introduction somebody says that I'm like an undercover comedian, we can end the podcast there. My day is made. I can move on to the next thing. Growing up, I wanted to be three things growing up. I wanted to be in a punk rock band, I wanted to be in the NBA, and I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. And I can't sing or play music, so that was really hard for me to be in a band. I grew to be about 5'10" with a great jump shot, but that's not getting me to the NBA. Especially I have two really bad knees. And I always wanted to be a stand-up comedian, but I am not great at memorizing anything. I always just lose my train of thought. I'm a big notes guy. So getting up in front of somebody to read them jokes maybe isn't the best way. So anyways, I say all of that to say, number one, thanks for having me on the podcast. Number two, I am just a guy who loves words and has found the beauty of simplicity, and that has changed how I've viewed the world, myself, God, life, and how I approach writing is to lean into the simple, the ordinary, and that all led to the writing of the book that we're talking about, of getting through what you're going through. And I think with all those things together, I can't help but make some sort of self-deprecating jokes every now and again.
Well, I know somebody who's doing their high school thesis is on humor and whether it's actually helpful when you're going through stuff. And I was like, oh, the answer is yes. I mean, it's a one-word thesis, of course. How could it not be?
I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, no offense. You don't need to write a paper on that. We've got the answer.
Exactly. Oh, gosh.
Now, there are some things that are unhelpful and maybe some kind of humor that is not as helpful as others. But humor in general,
if it's not kind of a way to escape actually processing what we're going through. But yes, definitely helpful. Okay, so one of the things we talk about on this podcast is responding to that sacred tug within and it being able to kind of lean into everything you are called to be and do. Did you have a moment when you felt that tug to write and to share your words and be a poet? Has it like always been in your DNA, or is it something that you were like, oh, this is a new call, a new thing that I'm being asked to step into?
There was always something in me that wanted to share what I was going through, like
Mm,
what I was learning, what I was asking, what I was seeing in the world, in myself, and in my community. And growing up, I thought that meant that I was going to be like a teacher or a pastor or something
yeah,
like that. And that's never really that doesn't fit my personality. Doing the same thing every day, going into an office or school or even like a
yeah,
pulpit, like that just didn't really fit with my personality. But there was always that deep desire to create, to share, to offer hope to the world. And then when I was in college and wanting to have been in a punk rock band, I was always writing
yeah,
lyrics and words and poems. And so I had this dream of being a writer, but I didn't really know what that looked like. And then when I was in college, I saw a spoken word poet
mm,
perform. He performed alongside some musicians at a venue in downtown Orlando. And when I saw him share a poem on stage, that's when I was like, oh, I can do something like that. And that's where I think the light was like, hey, go in this direction and see where it leads. And so I just started writing and putting words down and then doing the hard thing of being like, okay, let me get on stage and read
yeah.
what I've written. And then I started, you know, putting out books, getting on more stages, telling stories, trying my best to be somewhat of a stand-up comedian who reads out of a book half the time. Um, but yeah, there was just some. I think it was about 13 years ago. I was like, okay, let's try to do this.
Yeah. And am I right in saying you actually got fired from your first full time job? Did that kind of boot you
Yeah,
out the door and onto the
I
stage?
it really did. And I just wrote about this on Substack. But I've been doing a lot of processing and looking back on the last 10, 12, 13 years that got me to this place. My first job right out of college, it was an office job at a ministry center, and it was not the best fit. They were also going through all these
Yeah,
organizational changes. I was the youngest person working there by about 20 years, and it was just very obvious on both sides that I wasn't the right person for the job and they weren't the right employer for me. But it was still, I went to work one day thinking that this was where I was going to be for the next little while. And they brought me into the office. They said, hey, it's not working out. And I was very sad,
yeah.
but also very glad. Um, but when you enter into this, when something comes at you that you don't see coming and it rearranges your entire life and it makes you question who you are, what your life is about, what your calling is, where you're going to get a paycheck, who's
Yeah.
going to provide your health care, like it really wrecks you. And at 22, the most logical decision was, instead of going to get another full-time job, I was going to pursue poetry.
Because that's known for
So I
being
told my parents
stable
that
and providing
it's
healthcare.
the best. It's probably the best thing that you can do when you're looking for a steady income and an easy life, is to just pivot and become a poet. Um, but it was, I mean, there was no other time in my life where that could have been a good
Yeah,
option. I was single. I wasn't a dad, didn't have a dog. I had a pickup truck and like 3 boxes and 9 t-shirts.
yeah.
Like I didn't have much to my name. And so this was really like, I needed to be brought low so that I
Mm,
could see that poetry was
yeah.
the invitation,
Mm.
that writing was that it made sense. And so I got a job at a coffee shop, and then eventually I got a job at a camp, and I worked full-time jobs, and I wrote in the mornings and the evenings. But the dream really came alive when I was brought to one of my lowest seasons.
Mm. And I love that you were responding to the tug that you had already felt at moments like in college and at other times. And so
Mm-hmm.
to some people it might have seemed completely out of the blue, but to you it wasn't that bonkers.
It always made bonkers is a great word, by the way. It always made perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
And I could always see that this was something. I don't want to say like it was. Sometimes we talk about calling and it's like, this is the
Yeah.
thing. Like we are called and invited by God to do so many things. Writing, poetry, speaking are some of the things that I have been invited to do. It's not my whole world. It's just like what I'm doing with most of my
Mm.
waking hours these days. But for me, I always saw it as like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Um, and I just believed that it was going to matter
Yeah.
and lead me somewhere,
Yeah.
not knowing where that somewhere would have been. And that somewhere could have been like, oh, I shared poetry on stage for a youth group for a church in central Wisconsin on a Thursday night. Like
Yeah.
that could have been just it. And that would have been great. I mean, the whole idea of all of what I do is just to spread hope and invite people to believe that God has not forgotten them and something more is happening than we can see.
Yeah.
And so that's yeah, it was a really wild season in my life though. It was rough.
Yeah.
Like like anytime you chase a dream, it's not going to go the way that you
No.
think it's going to
No.
go. Or anytime you say you follow God and he says, "Okay, come with me this way," it's not going to go the way that you think it's going to go.
No.
So at all times, buckle up because it's going to get bonkers.
And through your writing and your speaking, you have been wonderfully open about your struggles with everything from kind of panic attacks and breakups, grief, your infertility journey, adoption, loneliness, burnout, depression, anxiety, gosh, and even
Oh
exhaustion.
gosh, I've talked
I
about a lot of
know.
things.
When I
Oh
was
no.
reading all the stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, Tanner, are you
Oh
okay?
my god.
You
I'm doing right now. I'm
good
doing just fine right
today for
now.
now, yes. But
For now, I know now what's
but
next.
your
Gosh.
but your writing comes from a place of being very real with that, a place of brokenness in you, if you like, but also a place of hope.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd
Yeah.
like to kind of say, how do you do that? Is that a posture you take on all the time? Like you are simultaneously carrying around both? Or is it that you're flip flopping from one to another? Because I'm sure, I mean, I know I can relate to a lot of what you have been through with my own journey. But for those people
Oh yeah.
who are just like, oh my gosh, that is me, how do I walk in hope when we're still in the middle of all that hard stuff?
Well, that's a big question, Nikki. It's a good question. The thing that I have been, and I've learned a lot over the last. I think if we just talk about it and say like the last five
Yeah,
years, right? The last 5 years have just been if you've really been awake at
yeah,
all, it's been just a lot, and
yeah,
it seems just to get heavier in different ways in the different areas of
yeah.
our lives, uh, in our in our spirituality, in our politics, in our relationships,
Mm,
like we don't have to go through the whole
yeah,
list. It's just a lot to be a human being, and the last 5 years have not been easy. And one thing that I have learned over this time is that at all times I am usually holding two things at once. Never is it just like the
yeah.
one thing. The thing that I know to be true about hope is that it is always present.
Mm,
Like hope does not just go away, it does not disappear. Sometimes it might seem quiet, sometimes it might seem slow, but it is always at the table. And the table is often full of other things too, like grief or
mm,
disbelief or frustration or anger or loneliness or depression or infertility or
yeah.
all the things. And yet hope can't help but be present
Mm,
and sit with us in that. So at all times for me in all of those seasons, like yeah, they were hard, and I wouldn't wish it on anybody. But the light was always on.
yeah.
Dim as it may have been, the light was always on. Um, and so for me, I just kept looking at the light. And then I would look back and I would see how God had been faithful. And if that's God's pattern, he's going to continue to be faithful.
Mm, that's a lovely picture of hope being present at the table with everything else. And I think that points to this idea of a present hope, because I think I think it's
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Merritt that spoke about it, and I heard about it through something Emily P. Freeman was talking about on her podcast, but the idea of both a present hope and a future hope. And the future hope is kind of putting our
Mm-hmm.
hope that everything's going to be okay, but we don't always know that. But there is this present hope as well. And that, to me,
Yeah.
is what you're talking about with the hope at the table along with everything else.
Yeah, I think hope always tells us that everything is going to be okay, but it does not dismiss that everything is not okay today.
Yeah,
Because I think those two things are always true, at least from what I believe and what I know about God, is that everything is going to be okay. But I also know that right now everything is not okay. So there is this perspective, looking at things in the present, but also knowing that the future is brighter than the now. And so I just keep holding on and trusting that
mm.
we've not been forgotten and something more is happening, and one day it's all going to be okay.
Yeah, and that,
But I don't say that to somebody when they say, "Hey, I'm going through a
oh,
hard time." I don't ever
I
say,
would,
"Oh, well, everything." I will tell you everything is going to be okay
yeah,
one day, but I know everything is not okay right now. And then the way that we view okay and the way that we understand what it means to be okay changes with the
yeah,
things that are forming us and shaping us and like breaking us down and building us up or pruning us back or however you
yeah,
want to talk about it. All the things that you listed that I have like written about and talked about, I don't I don't look at those things anymore and say I wish they never happened.
mm.
I look at them and I say I wouldn't be me if they
Yeah,
didn't happen, and I wouldn't have this perspective or this view or this like this philosophy of hope if I didn't
mm.
get broken down again and
Mm.
again.
And a number of people who have been through a lot, whether very sudden and very tragic things or ongoing struggles to manage, would probably say the same thing. I know I would about, losing my
Mm-hmm.
mom and my sister to cancer and then being diagnosed just 6 weeks after losing Joe, or like Michael J.
Mm-hmm.
Fox with the way he talks about his Parkinson's. He says, I'm grateful for it. Would we have a do-over and do
Yeah.
it exactly the same? No, of course not. I don't, but am
Yeah.
I grateful? Has it made me who I am? Yes. So I think there's
Yeah.
there's that in it. Now, one of the things I love to talk about is, science and nature and faith all kind of wrapped up together. And science and research kind of have proven the power of writing as a way to process pain and help us feel less
Mm-hmm.
alone. We know that is well documented, and psychologists and therapists use writing as a way to treat everything from PTSD to and trauma. And I know for me, this is most powerful when I write my prayers. So for me, rather than going away and writing and processing, I kind of write my prayers, and they can be anything from a kind of angry, full on,
Mm-hmm.
redacted lament to pleas for a way through, and to know God's not left me, to a list of things that I'm grateful for. So, has your processing, I know you talk about that and it being your creative outlet, but do you process it separately to your poetry, or when you're processing it, is it coming out as poetry? I think that's the question.
Yeah, I think it does come out either like it comes out either way it's coming, whether it's in the form of me writing. It's always me writing a poem, a prayer, an essay, a
Yeah,
reflection or something. I know that for me, I it takes me a long time to understand what it is that I'm feeling, what it is that I'm asking, what it is that I'm wondering. And so writing for me is a way to process all of the things. But I also know that it is also like this, it's a bridge for others to then step there and process with me.
yeah,
One thing that I have learned, it is to trust the words of other people. So when they tell you, hey, you are good at this, to believe them.
yeah,
And people have told me again and again that I can put into words how they're feeling.
Yeah, you do.
So I know that when I sit down and write about what it is that I am processing, going through, wrestling with, that I am also then creating a space for other people to do the same. And so that it kind of helps on both levels. It helps me, and
Yeah.
I love to try to help other people. And so I think, I totally believe that writing is this powerful force. It's very cheap as well. I always say it's the cheapest form of therapy, right?
Yeah.
But also, like, if you go to therapy, like, one of the first things most therapists will tell you is, like, you should keep a journal. You should get all of this that's in you out, and so that you can see it. And sometimes I write things down and I'm like, is that really what you think
Yeah.
or feel? I'm like, well, maybe we should go back to that therapist, right?
Yeah.
So it's all this stuff, but it's helpful. And I'm always encouraging people, yeah, you should write.
Well, I have to say, reading your book, which has poetry in it, it has stories of what you've been through, reflections, all sorts of things in it. So it's not just a book of poetry, but I felt incredibly seen and understood,
Mm,
even though I'm not a dad, even though, you know, all the things that
yeah.
that you might mention that might be specific to you. There is an underlying human condition, underlying, you know, the way that we process things, the thoughts that come out of it, that we must, you know, we're alone, nobody else is going through something like this, nobody else is as stupid as I am to think that, or whatever it is, you know. I felt I was able to feel seen and known, which is such a
Mm.
gift, such a gift. So those people, they're right,
I
Tanya.
think I think that kind of comes from a place of, have you ever been in a group conversation and somebody asks a question and people start to go around and share answers, and then one person is skipped? Like,
Yeah.
I'm always the person who's very aware of the person that has been left out of the conversation or
Yeah.
skipped. And so when I show up to write, I'm trying to make it as, like, inclusive
Mm,
for everybody, so that when the person who, like, does not understand, like, doesn't has never wrestled or walked through depression or unexplained infertility or the things that I've walked through, they can still nod their head with it and say, okay, I haven't gone through that, but I know I have gone through
mm,
something, and what he is saying here can speak into that pain,
yeah.
frustration, circumstance.
Yeah. Gosh, you know, and one of the things that I kept going back to when I was going through my cancer journey and through the grief and loss was I kind of fled to the place that I feel closest to God, which will be no surprise to anyone, is of course outside. It's
Hmm.
nature and seeing God within it, and was outside and in nature something that helped you both in your struggles and in your creative journey? Because there's definitely a sense of that in your wonderful writing, or was there
Hmm.
somewhere else that was your kind of place to flee to?
It was always out. I think it's always outside.
Mm,
I always want to get outside and be outside, and either that or go to, like, a coffee shop.
yeah.
But we live in Nashville, and they're very expensive and overcrowded right now. So that's not really a peaceful place. It's kind of like D- Disneyland for coffee addicts, and it's not a ride I want to get on. So for me, it's always like, I just want to, if I can get outside,
Mm,
like, away from my screen,
yeah.
my phone, from looking down and looking up and just being outside, everything is better.
Mm,
I was a camp counselor for many years. I grew up in Florida, so I got to be
yeah.
outside for, like, every day. I got to be outside growing up. And right now, we're recording this in January, and it's a rainy, gloomy day in Nashville, and I just want to be able to be outside, and that's not going to happen today.
Mm.
My mom would always say something, and I talk about this, I think, on every podcast. But some days you just have to make your own sunshine,
Oh,
and I think that's sometimes what I do, as a when I write, is I'm trying to make up make my own sunshine, or at
yeah.
least I'm trying to point myself to the light. Um, but I like for me, I write better and live better
Mm,
when I get to spend time outside.
mm.
Um,
And I would say, I know that
yeah.
is true for me as well. And I would argue that that's because being outside helps us connect with God. And in the previous episodes, all 3 of them that we've had so far on the podcast. But I've been talking about hearing God's voice and a lot about the brain science of why getting out in nature helps us tune into his voice and what happens in our brain and the quietening of our brain when we actually engage with nature. So that's why. And I would say there's no such thing as bad weather, just inappropriate clothing. So get your Macintosh on, put your welly boots on and go outside.
All right. Well, I don't know 2 of those words, but I will say
we need to probably, a Macintosh is like a raincoat and welly boots are rain boots, gum boots. What do you call them here? They're Wellington boots.
I think we call them rain boots.
Yeah. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. And a Macintosh is a computer. Anyways. Okay. So, but I was going to say you bring up something really wonderful. When I was a few years ago, about 10 years ago, I was working at this camp in northern Wisconsin where you can be outside year round, but you have to wear a lot of the right clothing, Macintoshes, all this kind of stuff. And so I was in a really dark season, a really hard place. I've written about it before. And I was living alone in the woods by myself in this duplex. And I was the only person who was living on one side and it was empty on the other. It was just rough. And I was like, okay, something needs to change. And so for 3-4 months, every day, morning and night, I would go out and I would walk the trails of northern Wisconsin and I would just talk and pray and listen. And that for me was the most healing season of my life. It was on the outside the most lonely, but I never felt alone. But I would walk, and that's where like a lot of my, like, I think I can do the job I'm doing now because of that low season and because of the prayers and the time and the conversation spent outside and with God. But it was walking the woods of northern Wisconsin, past lakes, down trails, over down trees, all this kind of, and it was, so if anyone's like, well, I don't need to get outside, you definitely need to get outside if you want to heal your insides. Like there's just something about being and knowing and trusting, like that was, I believed and trusted I was not walking alone.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, finally, what we're going to start doing, and you get to be the first one, is to ask each of our guests the same question. And like I said, you're the first one to answer it. So no pressure here, Tanner. What is helping you live wildly known right now?
I really just want to talk about being outside still. But I mean, and maybe that is, there's something that, there's something that comes to mind is the last couple of nights. Our son Judah is a little over 2 years old, and right before we go inside for the night, one thing that I do is we look up at the sky and we say goodbye to the day, and we say good night to God, and we go inside. But I think understanding in that we are seen and we are known, and so we say good night and goodbye, and then we go to bed, and we wake up and we do it again the next day. And in the morning, what I do is then I have been for the first part of this year of going straight to the kitchen table and sitting down and reading scripture and praying and being. And I think to live wildly known really begins with understanding that you already are.
Mic drop there. I think anyone who comes after you is going to struggle. Living wildly known.
There will be so many better answers.
Begins with knowing you already are. That's definitely a keeper, that quote. Now, one of the things we also do is to end with a prayer or a reflection or a practice. And you have said that you would close us out with a reading from your book. But before you do that, maybe while you're finding the right page, do tell everyone where they can find you, where they can follow your writing and your speaking, and of course get getting through what you're going through?
Yeah. Well, the book is out.
Yay!
It's called Getting Through What You're Going Through. You can find it on Amazon, anywhere you get books, hopefully a local bookstore. The book is orange with an orange on it, so you're not going to be able to miss it. I mean, this thing is just super bright. And yeah, you can find it anywhere. You can find me on Substack and Instagram. I also just, I hate to admit it, I did just download TikTok too, and it is
Really?
not a great place.
No.
So, but I'm there. I'm not dancing, but I'm on it.
And you're there as
yeah, I would
written
love
to speak, not Tanner Olson.
just if you,
Yeah.
yeah,
And it'll all be
but
in
if
the
you
show
search
notes.
Tanner Olson,
It'll all be in the show notes.
yeah, you'll find me. I'm
Yeah.
around and very easy to get a hold of. And I'm on tour right now, so maybe I'll be in your city, and would love to have you come to a show where I read poetry and tell stories and do make some jokes. Hopefully, they're funny ones. All right, I haven't read this one on a podcast before, but there's some things in that we talked about a little bit, so I figured it would be a good one for us to read. It's titled "Go On," and it's a little bit long, but it's going to be okay. I promise. Okay. Go on. Wake up early. Say a prayer. Make your usual cup of black coffee. Put a piece of bread in the toaster. Toast it until it's golden brown and not a second earlier. I know it's hard to wait, but wait. It's almost ready. Smear Land O'Lakes butter across the top and don't be stingy. Life is too short to be stingy. Forget your phone. You don't need it to thank God. You don't need it to sip coffee. You don't need it to enjoy the last buttery bite of toast. It's a perfect bite. Say amen. Touch your toes or try or tell them that you're going to get them in heaven. Go for a walk. If you want, do the same walk you did yesterday. As you go, walk a little slower. Wave to the children, pick up the trash, wave to the neighbors, smile. Always remember to smile. Don't be creepy, but smile. Look up at the sky. It's still there. It was there yesterday too. Did you see it? God made the sky. God made the clouds. God made the birds. You can wave to them too. Do you see the trees? They're changing and changing and changing just like you. Season after season, growing through storms, swaying in the sunlight. Look at the trees and remember how they came to be. Like your faith, it all started with a little seed. Remember how beautiful it is to believe. And at night, step outside one last time. Watch the sun fall into the silence of the horizon, a daily reminder we were made to rest and rise and repeat. Rest, rise, repeat. Feel the light of the setting sun dance on your skin. You are alive. You're covered in grace. You are seen. You are significant. From your head to the toes you cannot touch. From your insides where the coffee mixes with golden brown toast to your outside where the light hugs your skin like an old friend saying hello. From your waking to your sleeping, from your wondering to your realizing, from season to season, from your first breath to your last, you are significant. Go on.
Tanner, that is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I hope that book that you just read from gets into as many hands as possible, because we need it. So thank you.
Well, thank you for being my friend, and thank you for having me on the podcast. It means a lot.
Oh, you are more than welcome. Take care. Thanks for spending time with us on the Wildly Known Life podcast. Before you go, remember, sometimes the best thing we can do for ourselves is to step outside, take a breath, drop our shoulders, and ask what our wildly wonderful God has to say. That's where coming alive in our faith and our life begins, and living wildly known follows. Or as Tanner said, the key to living wildly known is believing you already are. Now, if that hits home, be sure to subscribe, leave a quick review, and share this episode with a friend who's also feeling spiritually underwhelmed and is ready for more. And don't forget, we would love to see you inside the Wildly Known Life community over on Substack. The link's down in the show notes. It's a vibrant, down-to-earth gathering for honest talk, practical tools, and deeper conversation and connection. Because God didn't design us to do and live this wildly known life alone. See you next time, my friend, and remember, Live wildly, live wildly known.